Hello, and welcome to the Fearless Podcast, where we empower Iowa women to succeed in work and life. I'm one of your hosts, Emily Wood, joined by co-host Ladrina Wilson, Fearless editor Macy Shofroth, and a special guest. I'm excited for today's conversation about women making history now. All too often, we reflect on history with a look in the rearview mirror, and that vantage point can sometimes leave us missing what's happening right in front of us. When it comes to women's history, when Ladrina and I were talking about this conversation, one of the most transformative changes came from Title IX, which passed into law in 1972, and it prohibits sex-based discrimination in any education program or activity receiving federal funds. It's definitely relevant to our guests that will be coming on, but Ladrina, do you want to talk about what Title IX kind of means to you?
Yeah, I feel like over the years, Title IX has evolved to mean a lot of different things, and it's been probably hyper politicized, if you ask me. But what it means to me on a very personal level is I was a Division I student athlete, and so I reaped the benefits of that equity work that was a long time in the making. I think it also like when we were preparing for this, and don't get me wrong, I was not the athlete that Ella is, but I do recall talking in my family and with my mom and dad in particular. My dad played basketball in college, and so we always kind of thought that we got our athleticism, my brother and I, from my dad. And my mom, I can remember being really young and her interjecting like, "Hey, like, don't count me out." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She was like, "I was always the fastest girl in my school, in elementary school, in middle school, and high school." But my mom graduated from high school in 1971. So she, like, they got sports for girls the year after she graduated. So she actually never got to compete. And I think that when I reflect on that particular, like in a personal context, like there's a lot of missed potential when we don't think about positioning women for opportunities. Like they not only do they not recognize what their own potential is, but like the world around them doesn't get to see it either. And so when I think about women making history now, I just think about access. I think about all the potential that's out there, whether it's athletics or a wide variety of other fields. But what about you? What are your thoughts on Title IX or what women making history now means?
Yeah, well, I did a National History Day project on Title IX back in high school, and it was really interesting to learn about. And I remember one of the things that one of the people told me is that in sports, in particular, or in business in particular, there's a lot of look at how income and expenses factor into your revenue, but that's not always taken into account in sports because we like to say that men's sports make more money than women's sports, but that's not always the case when you factor in the marketing and all that goes behind promoting men's sports that hasn't been in women's sports. So that was super interesting. And then I recently read Billie Jean King's autobiography,
Mhm.
and so huge iconic woman in sports, and she was one of the people who pushed for Title IX. And I found it really interesting her kind of talking about that context of that time and how initially when Title IX came out, it wasn't meant for sports necessarily because it was meant for education, but sports plays a huge role, I think, in our society and how in the advancement of women. So I'm excited that today we're kind of going to dive into that and talk about sports, but obviously in the broader context of women making history. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so let's bring on our special guest today. Ella Schmit is a senior at the University of Iowa, majoring in enterprise leadership, and she's a member of the women's wrestling team. She has been a big advocate for growing girls and women's wrestling in the state of Iowa. She is originally from Bettendorf, where she wrestled for the Bulldogs, and she became the fourth girl to qualify for boys high school state. Welcome, Ella.
Thank you for having me.
Does it ever feel weird to have people like read your bio right in front of you?
A little bit, but I've gotten used to it as the years have gone on, so
You're gonna have to give me some pointers after we get off of this call, 'cause every time it just, like, makes my skin crawl, but when I hear other women's bios and I hear their successes, it gives me so much energy, and I have to just say I'm so very proud of all that you've accomplished.
thank you.
I've had the opportunity being from the Quad Cities, but also being connected to your parents, through my work history. I've gotten a chance to watch you and your parents navigate being a world-class wrestler and literally traveling internationally to compete while not having full rights and privileges of a student athlete here in Iowa. So if you could please just tell us a little bit about your journey and whether or not you felt like you were changing the landscape of girls and women's wrestling while you were doing it.
Yeah, for sure. So my journey goes back quite a ways. Pretty much my brother was the only person that was ever really supposed to be a wrestler between the two of us. My dad wrestled, so like I grew up in a wrestling family, and got to be that time where they wanted to throw my brother out there into practice. So being the sister, I always had to go along, because usually one of my parents was at work or doing something else. So I had to go sit and watch him, and typically that involved like doing homework and all the boring stuff that no little girl wants to do. At the time I was in gymnastics, and so I always kind of like wanted to be hands-on with it. It looked interesting to me, but like that one moment that kind of changed everything was I was really good at climbing ropes. I don't know if you like know anything about gymnastics, but you climb a lot of ropes in that, and I could do it pretty fast and do a lot of them. And so at the end of one of the wrestling practices, I like had my shoes off. I was in socks and I was just walking around on the wrestling mats, and one of the coaches let me climb the rope, and I did it like, not to brag, but probably faster than most of the boys in that room. And he was like, you should go out for wrestling or give it a try. It was Coach Lloyd. And he's still super heavily involved, which is awesome to see. But at that time, that was like a crazy statement to say because there were no other girls in the room. And I was totally down for it. It took a little bit of convincing, more with my mom. She didn't know what to think about her little girl going out there and wrestling boys, but eventually my parents gave in, and I worked hard and proved to them that I wanted to, follow through with it. And I promised I would do at least one tournament. So I did that tournament, ended up winning one match. And my mom tells you to this day, like she was like almost positive that I was going to be done after that, but I loved it and kept going. Went all the way through high school, wrestled boys up until my senior year. I kind of hit a big growth spurt. I jumped from 106 to 126 and decided then that I would definitely be pursuing wrestling in college. So wanted to play it smart, not wrestle bigger dudes and get hurt. So I ended up switching over to girls. And at that point, like you mentioned, it wasn't really sanctioned. So it wasn't like an official sport in Iowa. So I had technically won 3 state titles, but technically not. It's a little confusing because it wasn't sanctioned. But thankfully, as I was graduating, Iowa announced their program. So I got recruited by them, decided to wrestle for Iowa. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I've always grew up as a little girl before I even started wrestling, going to Carver and the Carver meets. And I don't know if you've ever had the Carver cones, the ice cream cones. Those were like my favorite thing in the whole
Oh,
world.
really?
Yes. You could get me to go to Carver if you promised me a Carver cone. So I was really familiar with it. But like I said, I never really knew that it would be a possibility growing up to even wrestle in college. One, to wrestle for a D1 Power 5 Big Ten school and my hometown or home state. So that was amazing. And ever since then, I've just been a college athlete, out here, like you said, getting my major in enterprise leadership, and just the transition from, because I know you wanted me to talk about developing and how this sport is developing and being more of a trailblazer, and it hasn't stuck out to me more than it has these past few years.
What's different?
So like I said, when I started, there were no other girls. And I'm okay. This is one really good example. So, say like I'm very into TikTok. I love being outgoing and showing that online. And there were no girls when I wrestled, right? So it was like when I first got into my TikTok and posting about it, like people were totally intrigued that like girls even wrestled. A lot of people didn't know that that was a thing. Now I go on TikTok and it's other girls that wrestle creating content. Like it's so fun to see other girls enjoying what I had such a passion for in high school, and all the opportunities, seeing them talk about their all girls teams, like that was something that I had to create at Bendorf. I made the girls team so that I could be part of it. And all these girls getting to just walk into those opportunities in rooms full of girls, but then also people that want them to succeed and aren't just looking at them weird because they are a girl in a male dominated sport. It warms my heart. And then on top of that, seeing how much other girls do love the sport and have a passion for it, it's just like getting to share that with other girls is awesome. So although I never really got to experience it back in high school, like just getting to be in college and go to the state tournament or go to Donnybrook just happened, which is a tournament at Extreme, and just see the numbers is unreal. So that's a
Can I
lot.
ask,
That's
it is a lot, and it's also like so interesting. And Emily, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask a follow-up question because I
Mhm.
think like I'm intrigued by the fact that it was your mom, not your dad, that was like kind of hesitant, but also this idea that, I mean, going into high school, you're what, 14 years old, and you're like, I'm going to create this thing since it's not there for me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to create this program since this is what I want to do and it's not there. And I know that I see women who are, 24, 34, 44, and keep going, who still don't have that mentality. They just don't see themselves in it. So where does that come from? Where did that come from for you, for you to be like, well, it's not there, so I'll just create it?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, my mom, I'm sure, has always implemented that into me, and she's the part of the reason why I'm such a powerful young-ish woman. I guess I'm growing up now. But also just I think the support team that I had behind me. I know Coach Knight, so he's the varsity coach for the men's team. He had made a spreadsheet and he's like, "Okay, we need to get like this many numbers on the spreadsheet." So during school hours, like we would go around trying to recruit girls
You were
and put
recruiting?
yeah, put their name on these spreadsheets, and it's like, after a while, it's like, there's not huge numbers, but there are girls that wanna try it, and it's like, to me, it's like, I have the ability to teach them what they need to know to get started, so I don't know why I wouldn't. I'm a firm believer that teaching is just as helpful to me as it is to them. I learn from it too, so, it was never something that I was opposed to doing. I just needed to see that there were girls there that wanted to do it, so as soon as I saw that, there was no doubt in my mind that that's what I wanted to do.
Awesome. Awesome.
Love that idea of teaching being helpful to you too.
Yeah, for
Um, so I feel like with sports and physical activity in general, there's a lot of stereotypes around what women can do or should do, um, and you're certainly in a male dominated sport. But I'm just wondering, when you were wrestling with boys, what were some of the stereotypes or barriers that you ran into?
Yeah. Um, Stereotypes, I think the most like obvious one is that I just wasn't capable of doing what the guys were. Whether that was technique, I couldn't. Maybe people thought that I just wasn't intelligent enough to comprehend the technique, or mostly strength. I got told so many times that guys are just stronger than girls. I'm gonna get hurt going out there. Da 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 da. All of that, but kind of like I said, I did have those people behind me supporting me and not letting me fall into those stereotypes. Like at points it did suck, and I'm not gonna like act like girls are the same as boys, because they really aren't. Like, I did have to work extra hard being in a room with all guys. I can't do as many push-ups as them, right? So things like that. But I think that those extra components and coaches that held me to the same standard as all the other guys in the room made me who I am now, and that's the reason why I can compete at such a high level. So there were stereotypes, but in a way, I found a way to embrace them rather than letting them get to me and bring me down.
I think for a lot of women, and then just expectations that I think people have in general, that there's sort of like this stereotype against being a strong woman. And I mean, like, physically strong.
Yes.
And what do you think is empowering about it to be strong?
To be strong, I love being strong. I mean, I work every day to be strong. Our team has lift 3 times a week, and the whole goal is to get stronger. So I think, honestly, like, going back to social media again, there's so many big influencers and such that are promoting that now, and it's cool to be in the gym and be strong. So I love that. But kind of like we did say, there were stereotypes more back when I was getting started, that girls shouldn't be strong like that, or at least not in a sense of a guy. But I always embraced it. I love my back muscles. I have so many pictures of me like flexing when I was little. I thought they were the coolest things ever. So I never really had problems with that. My mom has always been a pretty strong woman growing up, so I had her to look up to. But yeah, being strong is awesome, and I tell that to all the girls that I interact with, whether it's on the mat or not. Any athlete, it's cool for to be a girl and also have some muscles. So.
I can remember, this really resonates with me, not just from, so there's like the physical component of strength, right?
Mhm.
Like what you look like. And then also I can remember being in college, and you said you think you're getting older. Imagine being in my seat. Um, but I can remember thinking, like, I really can't date a guy who's not an athlete, because they won't, like, they don't understand the time and commitment. They don't understand how you really can't put them first. Like, being a student athlete, especially at a D1 level, is a significant priority. But they also don't understand that the physical strength that you're exercising to, produce translates into mental strength and endurance and your ability to kind of like be present with yourself, be present with your body, but also disciplined. And so I just really admire the strength that you show both on the mat and off the mat.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I feel like I can relate to that in a sense as well. And I also think not to hate too much on men, but I think it also comes from like when you do prove to others like your confidence levels and your strength, whether that's physical, mental, whatnot, like insecurity does come out. And I've seen that on the mat as much as I have in like real life situations. Like as I did start to get good and beat guys, there were those insecurities that came out and really tried to take a toll on me, if that makes sense. So I think that, yeah, it all translates. And I think the number one thing that I would tell like any girl that does have a lot of strength and is trying to kind of figure out how to navigate that is to just be yourself, be confident. Anyone that tries to bring you down is just they're not on the same level as you. So
Yeah. I'm gonna have to also find those girls and just send them this recording whenever it's ready, because like
yes.
you are definitely setting the tone. Um, so let's look back again and think about, where you started, and think about youth sports. And youth sports is incredibly intense. I will also, add on to that, like in an Americanized context, because not all cultures glorify youth sports in the way that we do. But in this context, and wrestling in Iowa is like maybe second to football. Like people in Iowa just love wrestling. So you're in this kind of sacred space, and it's youth sports and it's intense. Um, Especially when you're like the best, one of the best in the country. So how did you manage being a trailblazer? I know you were a high performing student, and the athletic demands. How did you manage that then, and how do you manage it now?
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot, especially about like now that I'm in college, how do you even manage being a D1 athlete and like keep up with school because college itself is extremely hard. I always kind of resort back to what our coaches tell us here, which is academics first, always. You're a student before you're an athlete, and that kind of sticks with me. School comes first. My parents also implemented that with me, but then also like you do know school comes first, but also figuring out a way to manage your time and plan ahead because it gets crazy and extremely hectic. So, like for me, I have like at the beginning of the week, I have all in my head what I'm going to do throughout the week and making sure that there is that balance. I think that even if I weren't an athlete, I would need to work out to also balance school. To me, it's like it makes me feel free. It makes me feel like the stress isn't there when I am on the mat, if that makes sense, and then vice versa. So I think that if you can find that balance between both, really, they just complement each other and help you out.
Well, you definitely make it look a lot easier than what it actually
It's not easy. It's not easy.
So, you kind of have an interesting vantage point in that when you started wrestling, there wasn't necessarily the sanctioned side of girls or women's wrestling. So, you've gotten to see both, before now and then now with the current ability to participate in a sanctioned way. And I know we recently had done a story on your coach, and she had talked about how a lot of people come up to her, a lot of women come up to her and say, I wish I could have been able to do this. So what does it feel like to have that opportunity that, folks didn't always used to have? But also, does that feel like a lot of pressure sometimes?
Yeah, it is a lot of pressure, especially being just having Iowa, representing Iowa in general is a lot of pressure in the sport of women's wrestling. We are the number one in the nation. We have a lot of little girls that are looking up to us. College girls look up to us, but then also high school. So we have that whole range of girls that are constantly. I get so many DMs. And honestly, like we all just look at it as like a privilege. I love being in this position and being able to heavily influence other girls and give them that advice and that guidance that I never really had coming from another woman. Like I had great supporters growing up, like I said, but I never really had like an older girl that was wrestling that could really relate to me because you can't understand it unless you've been in their shoes. So I enjoy embracing every single piece of that. I've never turned down a question or not answered someone. Like I will always be open to giving my advice and just that guidance that I think every girl needs and deserves in their sport.
Well, it's awesome that you make time for that, and that just even finding time for that can be a lot of pressure, and so, I hope that you're sharing that love and that responsibility with the other folks on your team too, so that you can
Yes,
take care of yourselves.
yes.
I think, you know, we as women carry so much, and we carry it, in our being, we carry it on our hearts, we carry it in our minds, and it's a strong sense of responsibility and a form of nurturing is what you're doing, right? Like
Mhm,
you might call it mentorship, but it's still a form of nurturing the next generation.
mhm.
You don't have to do that alone. I just want you to
Yeah.
remember that whether you
Yes,
are
no, for sure.
21, 31, 41, like you should be doing that in community. And
Yeah.
so make sure you take care of
No,
yourself while
yeah.
you're taking care of others.
I Yeah, I would say even, like I made it sound like it's, like, me helping out other girls, but at the same time, like, now that I do have the opportunity to be on this team with other women that have also been in my shoes and are in my shoes, like, we look to each other too. So that's the other great thing about being surrounded by other female wrestlers, is I do have people to relate to today because I still struggle with things, as anyone would. So having that and then our team atmosphere is just amazing and great, and I can go to anyone on the team really. So yeah, for sure, spreading the love. We all talk to each other about our struggles every day, and honestly, it helps to talk it out. But and then just going back to like helping out girls that need or have questions or help or guidance or whatever. I feel like at kind of like with the whole idea of when I teach someone wrestling, it helps me. Helping them out with things that are could be even completely not related to wrestling kind of heals that like inner Ella, that young Ella that never did get that person. So I feel like it's definitely mutual. And a lot of times the girls don't really comprehend that and don't understand it and I don't expect them to, but like helping them out with that kind of stuff, it really helps me too. So
Good, good, good. Well, I'm glad you're finding ways to take care of yourself.
yes, for sure.
So you have changed the game. Women in Iowa now have access to wrestling. You've been a champion for equity, whether you realized it or not, and you've made history at such a young age, and that's amazing. So, what's next for you? How do you think you are going to take what you've gained from being on the mat and apply it to your future adult life?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think wrestling is something that I'll ever like fully get rid of. Once I'm done with all my college wrestling, I'm sure I'll still find myself in the room with wrestling shoes on, helping out or scrapping with whoever wants to wrestle. But I think that the life lessons that it has taught me will definitely stick with me. I'm a pretty determined person, and I think that anything that I set my mind to, I will be able to accomplish. And then just like I said, the confidence that I have from wrestling and all the confidence that it's given me throughout the years, I'll carry myself um, and whatever I want to do. So specifically, medical device sales is what I'm looking at. So I love talking to people, and getting opportunities like this has definitely helped with my communication skills as well. So wrestling has blessed me a lot off the mat.
Awesome. Well, we can definitely tell you like talking a lot. We could keep going. I could go at we the part that like pains me is that people don't even get to see the behind the scenes stuff we do before we actually get live because you're such a great conversationalist. So
Well, I would love to know. So we've talked a lot about wrestling in this in a context of sports, but what are your thoughts about women and girls who want to break barriers in other aspects of our world? What's your advice to them?
Yeah, I mean, just believe in yourself. Most of the time I actually love this. My mom like told me some statistic where it's like men are more likely to like think that they're capable of something they aren't than girls are to even think about being capable of something that they're totally capable of. And I don't know if that makes sense. It's definitely a lot more scrambled than the way she described it to me, but women so often downplay their abilities, and if you're just confident and you believe in yourself and you know what you're capable of, you're gonna go far, and just things are gonna work out. And that's kind of the lesson that I've learned is it may not look like exactly what you thought it would look like, but as long as you keep your head up and you work hard, I mean, you're gonna reach your goals regardless. So
yeah. So that phenomenon that you're talking about is called
yes,
the confidence gap.
that yes,
Where men
yes.
men tend to overinflate their confidence and think they're
Mhm,
capable of things that maybe there's no supporting information that they are, and women tend to think we're less confident or less competent than what we actually are.
mhm, for sure.
So I mean, this has been a really great conversation, and I've even learned a lot from you. Some of the things that stand out to me is, thinking about teaching as being helpful, not just to the person that you're helping, but also how it helps you. And
Mhm.
I appreciate you sharing that, Ella, because a lot of times, especially, as we see women in the world of work, or when you enter the world of work in a full-time capacity, sometimes your biggest barriers can be other women.
Mhm.
If we can really look at how we take care of each other, and how helping isn't just about taking away from yourself, but it really is about how you feed your soul and how you feed yourself, or as a form of healing, is really important. And you have shown so much wisdom in that space already. And there's a lot of people that I can think of that have a lot of catching up to do with you. And so keep up the great work. I
Yes, thank
also
you.
hear you encouraging people to like just take that step and fill that confidence gap.
Mhm.
Just believe in yourself and work hard at it, and those opportunities will avail themselves.
Mm. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. It's been amazing to catch up with you after all these years. I know how busy and demanding your schedule is, so I'm glad that you were able to make time for this. I do have one last thing that maybe I want you to share with the group.
Mhm.
Um, whoever is listening, I know that you've got that little mark right here. Um,
Yes.
did you win?
I won, yes.
Okay, then it's all worth
Got
it.
a
I just
chunk of
want to
my
make sure
skin, but I won, yes.
you won. You won. All right. Well, you have an amazing rest of your semester and college
Yeah,
experience. I'll keep watching you from afar on social
thank
media and checking
you.
in with your parents. Take care of
Yes.
yourself. You're a phenomenal woman.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
Well, that was such a great conversation. I can't wait to get your take on it. Let's bring Macy in and get her perspective as well. Um, I don't know, guys. Like, I felt like I didn't just have a conversation with like a young person. She's
Yeah,
amazing.
that was amazing.
Yeah. Macy, what are some of your reactions to that conversation?
Yeah, I remember because when I lived in the Quad Cities, I worked for the Quad City Times. And I remember when she was in her senior year and just being like, wow, what an incredible woman. And look what she's doing. And wow, she's going to be on the first University of Iowa women's wrestling team. Like, that's incredible. I was really struck by her comment about strength and loving her muscles. And it kind of made me think, so we're talking about history making women. And I think something we downplay about how we can make history as women is just being our authentic, strong selves. As she was talking about that, I thought about my older sister. So, me and her both do this weightlifting program from this trainer named Meg Gallagher, and her phone app is all about getting barbells into the hands of as many women as possible. And my sister, she's been doing it for I think 4 or 5 years, and has her strength is just incredible. She shares her numbers. She has transformed herself, and she has two young sons, and they watch her lift weights in her basement. They are so impressed with how strong their mom is. And then she also has the strong personality side of it as well. I can say that 'cause she's my sister, but she's 8 years older than me, and she is not someone to be messed with. And so I just think about how her showing that to my nephews is going to change their perspective of the women that they encounter as they grow older and as they get into middle school and high school and see these strong women. Like, because my sister is just authentically being herself and being the strong woman, they may hopefully, if things go right, are not going to be two men who try to tear down the strong women. They're going to be hopefully the people back there saying like, yeah, that's cool. That's how it should be.
Yeah, that's awesome. You can tell that you really admire your sister. And
Yes,
that's
yes.
good that you have that too. Emily, I mean, that was one of my favorite conversations. I'm obviously very biased, but because just of watching her, as a young person growing up in this community. But bias aside, I thought she was very interesting, and shared some really interesting stories. What do you think of the glass ceilings that she's broken, and what do you think's next for women in our country, or even in our state?
Yeah, I think one of the things I was kind of thinking about as she was talking about that, about being, being strong and being whoever you want to be. I think to the ultimate glass ceiling to shatter is that women get the choice in whatever, and all these different venues in life, whether they are, a single woman, they're not judged for that. If they're a married woman, they're not judged for that. If they're divorced, not judged for that. If they choose to have kids or don't have kids, they're not judged for that. And those are all just on the personal side. But I think all of those things relate to how women end up ascending into leadership roles. All of these things contribute to how people perceive us. And so to me, the ultimate glass ceiling to shatter is, do women feel comfortable in making whatever choice feels right for them in all of these venues and feel like they can have the confidence to move forward? And I think that's some of the reason why there's still gaps from a business context of women in higher leadership positions, because a lot of the systems are not designed for women to have to make the choices that they want to make and be supported in that. I think that's why there's a lot of women who open their own businesses and go into that world, because the world that they were working in wasn't designed around the choices that they wanted to make in their life. So I think ultimately that's the goal, is to allow women to have those choices and feel supported in them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really powerful. So Macy, from your perspective, what's the glass ceiling that's on your mind in Iowa, or even more broadly?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and me and Emily kind of talked about it this morning too. Is I think the easy answer would be, seeing a woman president would probably be the one that most people's minds jump to. And while of course I want that to happen in my lifetime, I think what's more important is kind of what Emily said, is how are we viewing women? How are we talking to each other and treating each other and making systems that support whatever choice we decide? And I think until we can make that society that supports women of all, supports people in every decision they make and how they want to live their lives. I don't know if having certain people of certain demographics in certain positions of power is going to affect the change that we want. I think it really comes down to that interpersonal relationship level and how we talk to each other and treat each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely appreciate where you guys are coming from, both from the level of like choice, whatever that means to the person, right? Like, no, not just getting the choice, meaning the system support them making the choice, but also knowing that they have the choice. That goes back to that confidence thing, right? That knowing that you have the choice. And then this other aspect of like, let's not hit the easy button. Let's do the small things first, which is take care of each other, right? The easy button being like, yes, let's have this lofty goal of, although we've had a couple of near misses for a female president in this country, which why we can't figure that out, I don't know, but we, maybe we'll get there one day. And I guess my reaction to like the glass ceiling, what's next, is probably more practical and rooted in business. I definitely align with the things that you all have said as well. But when I think about the structure, like the overarching structures that exist in our country, we function in capitalism, right? And I don't say that with a value judgment on it. That just is the undergird of our kind of culture. And so for me, when I think about what is the glass ceiling for women, I think about access to capital. I think about equal pay. I think about, how are women able to navigate venture capitalism and access to loans. Our rates are, in businesses. And so when I know that that is the currency, right, of our culture, and I know that we're so far behind in so many different ways and metrics, in order for us to feel like we have choice, you also have to have the currency. And I know that no pun intended, but but our form of currency that has value in our society is really connected to capitalism. And once you have that financial freedom, I think you can better understand what choice is. Once you have that financial freedom, maybe you don't feel like you're competing with the woman next to you, and you feel like you can support her. And so I don't know that there's one right answer, but when I think about what you all have shared, those are things that come out for me as well.
Yeah, I love that, because I think it all goes back in together, right? Like if you don't feel like the choices and showing up as your authentic self, if you can't um, go ahead in your career and be able to have the access to capital or to grow your wealth because of the stereotypes that you face, that it all sort of like cycles back, right? And then not being able to have the opportunities. So I think all of those things are very related.
Well, today has been a delightful conversation. I want to just thank everybody for joining us. And as we think about, making history, don't think about it in the context of something that's going to happen way down the road or someone else is going to do it. If you take nothing else from this conversation, know that you can own the space that you're in. Know that you can be that trailblazer. We saw Ella do it as a young person, as a teenager. And so as we kind of go on about our day and we go on about our work, I just want everyone to remember to be bold, be brilliant, and be fearless.